the PlusDeck 2C. If you're watching this, you've probably already seen LGR's or RMC's video about it, but it's an audio cassette player for your desktop PC, which goes into a 5¼ inch drive bay, connects to your sound card and serial port, and lets you play cassette tapes and use your computer to transfer them to digital audio files. So demonstrating this piece of equipment is nothing new, but what is new is trying to get it to work with a modern computer, or at least more modern than something from the 1990s. I'm going to be trying to use it with this Dell Optiplex 3020. It is from 2014, but it is a Core i5 with 8 gigs of RAM, and it's running 64-bit Windows 10. This is the newest computer I have with a open 5¼ inch drive bay, an audio line-in jack, and a serial port, which it did not originally come with. I had to add this bracket here with the serial port and PS2 keyboard and mouse ports. So if you have one of these Optiplexes and you want to add this, you need to look for what it calls the Tigris PS2 serial port card. It says 13564-1 and then 48.3JS24.011, and hopefully that will be enough to find this specific card. There's one more thing I needed to add, and that's because the PlusDeck 2C uses an old Molex style power connector, and the power supply in this PC only has SATA style power connectors. So I got an adapter which converts the SATA power connector to Molex. So now with this adapter and that serial port card, I should be able to install the PlusDeck 2C. But first, before I commit to installing it, I want to leave it external in case I need to open it up and adjust the speed. So for now, I just have it connected to power, and I'm leaving it on top of the computer case. And at this point, you may think you can just use this as a standalone device once you have it connected to power, because it has all the playback controls on the front panel. It has a headphone jack, a volume control. So you think you can just pop in a tape, press play, and then connect your speakers. But if you do that, you don't hear anything. I discovered that in order to use it as a standalone cassette player through its headphone jack, you need to connect the ribbon cable to this bracket, and then to connect an audio cable from the blue jack to the green jack, and now you'll hear your music coming out of the headphone jack. Or just connect your speakers directly to the blue output jack and that'll work fine. I know the official cable routing of the PlusDeck 2C looks rather convoluted, and it is, but I think that's just a carryover from the older versions of this deck which could record, and thus needed the audio from your computer sound card to go into the PlusDeck. But since this one is a playback-only device, the only thing you really need is a cable going from the blue output jack of its bracket to the line-in of your sound card. Or if your computer doesn't have a line-in jack, you can use one of these audio to USB adapters that I did a video about. Just plug that in and then plug it into a USB port, and that'll work as well. And this serial port cable isn't really necessary either, because that's just for controlling the playback functions of the deck through the computer. Otherwise, you can just do it manually with the buttons on the front panel, and those work fine as well. So this is not really necessary, but I'll try to get it working anyway. So until I get everything properly installed, this is my makeshift setup. I have the PlusDeck 2C sitting on top of the computer, connected to power, connected to the ribbon cable and bracket it came with, the blue jack of the bracket connected to the blue line input jack of the computer sound card, and then the green output jack of the computer sound card connected to my speakers. Now I can pop in a tape, press play, then go to the control panel, go to sound, recording, make sure your line in is selected as the default device and is active with the green check mark. Then go to properties, listen, and check the box on listen to this device and hit apply. And now the music is coming through the speakers. And now we can use any audio recording software to record it into a file on the computer. So even without the original software the Plustek 2C came with, as long as you have a computer with a line-in jack, or if you're using one of these cables to convert the audio to USB, you can record it into your computer. Just remember to adjust the recording level so that you're not going into the red and clipping. You want to leave some headroom. I usually like to leave at least 6 dB of headroom above where the audio is peaking, just in case you happen to play a loud recording. That way it won't get distorted. One of the often cited criticisms of the Plustek 2C is that it does not support Dolby noise reduction or the proper equalization for chrome and metal tapes. But today, thanks to modern technology, we now have a software-based solution to provide those features not only to the Plustek 2C, but to any cassette deck which does not have those capabilities. So this will also work with modern cassette decks made after Dolby stopped licensing their noise reduction systems, such as the TEAC, Tascam, and Marantz decks I've done reviews of. It's called DDI Codec. It costs $15.99. It's available for Windows 10 or later, or Mac OS 10.10 or later. This video is not meant to be a complete tutorial on how to use all of its features and controls. I just wanted to give a sample of how it can be used and what its results sound like. Just before you start using this program, you want to go back to your control panel, go to Sound, Recording, Line In, or whatever device you're using, and you want to uncheck Listen to this device, otherwise you'll get an echo when using this program. And here's the interface. It supports either decoding or encoding Dolby B or Dolby C noise reduction, so you can not only use this to play tapes encoded with Dolby noise reduction, in case you want to make a recording with Dolby noise reduction on a deck that does not support it, you can use this as an encoder. And it also supports chrome equalization. So if you want to play a tape that needs chrome equalization that's being played on a deck that does not support it, such as the Plustek 2C, you can click this button that says 120 microsecond to 70 microsecond. That will apply the 70 microsecond chrome equalization to it. That 70 microsecond equalization also applies to Type 3 ferrochrome tapes and Type 4 metal tapes, so you can play those as well. It also has azimuth correction in case you're playing a recording made on a machine that did not have the tape head aligned correctly. You can correct that using this control here. And up here you can correct the channel balance of the recording in case you're playing a tape that has the left or right channel slightly louder than the other. You can use this to correct for that. And you can use it to either just listen live to your playback with the Dolby noise reduction and chrome equalization, or you can record it to a file using this section down here. You can see it starts recording whatever it's playing to a file, and then when you're done you can save that. Or you can go up here and open a file you previously recorded and then apply Dolby noise reduction and or chrome equalization to it and save that to another file using this Save As button, and then almost immediately it'll do that. You can choose your sample rate and bit depth, so that way if you already made a bunch of transfers from tape without Dolby noise reduction or the proper chrome equalization, you can use this program to open those files, apply the noise reduction and equalization to them, and save that to another file very conveniently. But like I mentioned earlier, before I put the Plustek into the computer, I want to make sure it's running at exactly the right speed. So I got my official TEAC wow and flutter and speed test tape, and I got a non-conductive adjusting tool, so I can stick that in this hole in the motor and use it to adjust the speed. And to measure the speed the motor is running at, I'm going to use another piece of software from the same author as the DDI Codec program. It's called NAC T100. It costs $24.99, also available for Windows 10 or Mac OS, and it has many features, but the one I'm interested in is the ability to measure wow and flutter and speed accuracy. So first I'm going to go to the options here and change the speed and wow and flutter to WRMS, which is what most tape deck manufacturers use to measure their wow and flutter. And I'm going to turn this knob down to speed, wow and flutter. First you're going to hear a test tone which it generates to allow you to make your own calibration tape, but we're not doing that, so I'm going to go down here to oscillator output and turn it all the way down. And you can use this bar graph meter here, but what I'm going to do is go to advanced, and that gives us this classical analog meters for speed and while and flutter. So now I'm going to put in that speed and while and flutter calibration tape and press play. And you can see we're running about 1.4% fast, and the while and flutter is around 0.1% WRMS. I'm going to move the scale down to 0.5%. And yes, that's just below 0.1%. So that's actually very good. But that's the forward side of the tape. I can play the opposite side. And on this side, the speed is a little bit slower, but still fast. It's just over 1% fast. And the while and flutter is a little bit higher. It's about 0.13% going in the reverse direction. So now I'm going to play that calibration tape again. Wait for it to stabilize, and now with my adjustment tool, I'm going to bring it down to the correct speed. You have to keep in mind that one side was playing a little bit faster than the other, so that's the forward direction, and that's the reverse direction. So one side is always going to be a little bit different than the other, but at least now the forward direction is just a little bit fast, like 0.2% fast, and the reverse direction is a little bit slower, like 0.2% slow, so they average out to 0, so that's right about perfect. And again, our while and flutter is right around 0.1% in the forward direction, and in the reverse direction it's just a little bit higher, around 0.12%. So that's pretty good, actually. And my measurement pretty well matches the published specifications in the manual, where it lists a while and flutter of 0.09% WRMS. They also specify a frequency response of 20 to 18,000 Hz, channel separation of 40 dB, and a signal-to-noise ratio of 55 dB. So now that the speed is adjusted correctly, I can put the cover back on this, put it inside the case, and button it up. It's ready to go. There's the drive neatly installed. Yes, it totally doesn't match the color scheme of the computer, but I don't care. I just think it's neat to have a semi-modern computer running 64-bit Windows 10 with a cassette tape player in it. And on the back I have that slot bracket installed with the serial port cable and the audio cable going from blue to blue. Now we're ready to finally start using DDI codec with the PlusTech 2C, but first we need to adjust the most important control I have not mentioned yet, and that is the Dolby reference level, because Dolby noise reduction is level sensitive. So for the best results you'll need to calibrate that Dolby reference level to the output level of your cassette player. The best way to do that is with a professionally made Dolby level calibration tape like this one. Unfortunately they're not cheap, but if you work on as many cassette decks as I do, it's money well spent. So you put in your Dolby reference level calibration tape, you press play, then you adjust this slider until it lines up exactly at 0, and now your playback is calibrated. Or you can make your own Dolby level calibration tape using any cassette deck with a Dolby calibration mark on its level meter. That's usually the Double D Dolby logo, or sometimes a dot on the level meter, or if you have a Denon or Nakamichi deck, 0 dB on the meter is the Dolby calibration level. What you do is you take a blank normal bias type 1 tape, you put it in, you leave Dolby noise reduction off on your cassette deck, and you go into recording pause mode. You connect the output of the computer sound card to the input of your cassette deck, and then go down here and click on generate reference tone. Then you adjust the level of that tone that the computer is generating until it reaches that Dolby calibration mark on your level meter, and you start recording, and you let it run for a little bit so that you'll have enough time to make your adjustment once you play it back. So that should be enough. And just to double check that it was recorded at the proper level, I rewound it back to the beginning of the recording, and I'll play it back. And you can see it matches the Dolby calibration mark on the level meter. So this is our homemade Dolby level calibration tape. No, it's not laboratory grade accurate, but it should be good enough for this application. Or if you don't have either of those options available to you, you can adjust it by ear to whatever sounds best to you on the tape you're playing, which you may end up having to do anyway on old worn out tapes or tapes that weren't recorded correctly. So in case you're playing a tape that was Dolby encoded, but when you play it with Dolby, it sounds muffled, you can adjust this to correct that to whatever sounds best to you. Here's an example of a tape which was designed to be played with Dolby B noise reduction and Chrome equalization. You can tell by the extra wide notches on the top. And I'm going to do that using the PlusDeck 2C and the DDI codec program.
Instruments and vocals are placed in their proper staging locations. Stereo imaging is improved, and a larger, more true-to-life sound field is created.
The music takes on a new spatial quality. Tone bursts, resonant lows, sizzling highs, and dramatic passages seem to float in midair. And you are center stage, right in the middle of the performance. Listen. ISI, a new kind of stereo sound system for Chrysler customers in the 90s.
You can also do the Chrome equalization just by itself without Dolby noise reduction, such as on this tape, which has those extra wide notches for Chrome equalization but was not recorded with Dolby noise reduction.
Welcome to your Claim to Fame's Fantasy Challenge. Hi, this is Pat Summerall. Each week we bring you great golf from the top tournaments in the country, filled with some truly unbelievable surprises. Now let's go out on the course with Nigel Ashcroft and catch up with the amazing story that's unfolding here.
Thank you, Pat. That story we're alluding to here at the U.S. Open is the possible record-shattering performance by a heretofore unheralded newcomer.
Well, if you thought John Daly's win on the PGA Championship was something to see, folks, well, hold on to your hats for this one.
And here's a sample of a standard Type 1 tape with Dolby B noise reduction.
After the Trojan War, it was 10 years before Odysseus returns home to Greece, where his wife Penelope was waiting, weaving, and fending off lots of muscle-bound Hercules types. Where was Odysseus all this time? Eating baklava with the beautiful nymph Calypso on a Mediterranean island. For 8 years, that's how badly he wanted to get home. Finally, Odysseus hits the open sea, only to have good old Poseidon wreck his ship, but Odysseus is rescued and tells his story. And if there's one thing Odysseus can do, it's talk. So here's what happens. Odysseus and his men leave Troy victorious, but they're blown to the land of the Lotus Eaters and sack out for a while in the Lotus position. At the next port of call, a one-eyed Cyclops eats 2 of his men for dinner and 2 more for breakfast before they escape to the edge of the world. That's where all the dead people live. They reminisce about old dead friends, drink a little blood, then they sail past the island of Sirens with their seductive song. Ah! Luckily, they all had wax in their ears, so no one heard a thing. Then the 6-headed monster Scylla chomps down 6 more of the crew, so the rest of the guys say, "What the hell?" and they shish kebab some sacred cows belonging to Hyperion, the sun god. The gods get angry again and they kill everyone else except for our hero, who somehow manages to get home. Then with the help of Athena, goddess of wisdom and arts and crafts, Odysseus kills just about everyone. Then he takes a break, he makes love to his wife, visits his dad, has some souvlaki for lunch, then he starts killing again. But this time Zeus, king of the gods, intervenes. "Knock it off, Odysseus!" And when Zeus talks, everyone listens.
And here's a sample of a recording I made myself back in 2004 of WCTC radio in AM stereo on a Type 2 high bias tape, so this will require Chrome equalization, and Dolby C noise reduction.
Central Jersey 1450 time is 3:35. Let's get it cooking. Here's Lori Jordan.
Delays right now on Route 18 northbound because the right lane is closed. I'm Lori Jordan, Central Jersey 1450 traffic update.
Over the next several days, we'll see a return to muggy conditions and some scattered showers or thunder showers as well. Highs in the mid-to-upper 80s. With your Central Jersey 1450 weather, I'm meteorologist Tommy Else.
A rather delightful 85 degrees.
Central Jersey Talk Radio. Central Jersey 1450 WCTC with Jack Ellery. Call Jack now at 732-545-9282. 732-545-9282.
Well, if you didn't hear, interest rates went up a tad.
And you can use the DDI codec program as just a pass-through to transfer your tapes into the computer without either Dolby noise reduction or Chrome equalization.
Sharbo and Company for Longhorn Steaks talking about 60-second instrumental. That means there ain't gonna be one bit of singing on this thing.
Just picking and grinning.
Picking and grinning. Hey, you got a pretty guitar, buddy.
Now, as promised, I'm going to try installing the software that the PlusDeck 2C came with. It was originally designed for Windows 98, so it'll be interesting to see if it runs in 64-bit Windows 10. Do you want to allow this app from an unknown publisher to make changes to your device? PlusDeck 2 version 3.25c. Of course. So it brought up the installer here. License agreement. It is an x86 program, of course. And it's installing. Installation successful. Is that it? Let's see if it runs. So far so good, but let me put in a tape. It says stop, and I'll press the play button going forward. And it's playing. I can pause it. Fast forward. Rewind. Play the opposite side. It's kind of quiet on that side, but it is playing. And eject. And it did eject the tape. So all these controls are working. And there's one thing here you can do that's missing from the unit itself, and that's the ability to auto reverse. Because even though this is an auto reverse tape deck, if you just press the play button on the front panel, it'll only play one side and then stop. And if you want to play the other side, you have to push the button manually. It won't automatically flip over. But with these settings, you can change it to either play one side and flip over and play the other side, or play both sides continuously. So that's nice. And yeah, these settings here, the only one I would really use is Wave, because I'm sure the MP3 encoder this is using is not very high quality. So I would recommend just using this for the playback features and using a more up-to-date program to handle the transferring of the audio from the tape into a file. But it's nice to see that this software still works in Windows 10 64-bit. I just wish it had automatic music search, because I noticed that when you fast forward or rewind, you can faintly hear the audio playing at high speed. So it seems like the mechanism was designed to have the ability to automatically find the next or previous track on the tape, but they never implemented that feature. I've been really impressed with the PlusDeck 2C and the quality of the results I've been able to get using it, especially with that DDI codec software. I think I'm actually going to use it going forward to do a lot of my cassette tape transfers into digital audio files, because it's a very convenient solution. The controls are very fast and responsive, and it's just a neat little solution rather than having to lug out a separate tape deck and set that up. It's all built in right here, and as far as I'm concerned, it sounds just as good as many component tape decks I've used.
Catspot Productions, Sharbo and Company, this is Longhorn. Talking about directions. It's in stereo. Man, is it.
This is George McCarroll of Longhorn Steaks. We're gonna try this jingle one more time. Let's hear it, boys.
Talk about Longhorn
and they're paying fried steaks. Come on out and eat one, no matter what it takes. If you gotta take a bus, you better make sure that your habits have changed. If the bus breaks down, be sure to get a token and take the train. There's taxi cabs that go there every day on a regular basis. They got little pictures to show you who's driving so you can see their faces.
This is worse than the first
one. So do whatever
one.
it takes to get there on the double, even if you use your feet. Set yourself down, order up a brew and eat some.
Wait a minute, stop. What's this got to do with Longhorn?
Well, we was getting there. Longhorn.
Oh, excuse me.
Longhorn Steaks. Talking about Longhorn.
Oh, you boys just ain't seen the ball since kickoff, have you?
What?
Who do we see about getting paid?
Oh, boy.